S08E21. That's all we need.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, Alex, and with me I have Logan. How are you, Logan?
Hey, Alex. Yeah, doing pretty well. It's been an interesting post-World Cup period, but it's nice to be back and watching the Tigers win, and then obviously the cup disappointment. But at the same time, I don't know if we were expecting all too much. So yeah, things going pretty well.
Yeah, I guess we haven't had you back on since the World Cup break. So what have you made, I guess, of the format the other side of the World Cup and Rosenior's time in charge so far?
Yeah, I found it really interesting. I think that one of the things that if you watch the interview with him when he first came in is he kind of came in, and I guess this is the line that you hear from most new managers is we want to play a certain brand of football and it'll take time, and whether that's just purely to buy themselves some time or ask for some patience from the fans. I think everything that he talked about in that interview, he's delivered on. He talked about the brand of football and wanting to play out from the back and hold possession. And he did say that the consequences of that will be that there'll be mistakes made and it will take a fair bit of time for us to adjust. And I think that's exactly what we've seen. I thought the initial games, I did read a lot into the frustrations from the fans. And I actually became quite frustrated, just following Twitter and seeing the early naysayers already kind of, jumping down his throat, because it was exactly what he warned us about. And I think, now that he's been given a period and we've seen a few positive results, all of a sudden people are kind of more willing to give him a chance. So I'm really impressed with what he's done so far. And I like the way he speaks. I feel like because he's, already someone who is familiar and the whole faithful are very fond of him to begin with, I think that definitely helps. But he just fills me with a lot of optimism, and it's really hard to fault his start and what he's done with the squad so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really great point on the way he speaks. I'm trying to think of the last manager we've had who's, I guess, spoken so well in the media. Maybe it was a Nigel Adkins, but I think with Rosenior, because it's actually backed up with, good performances on the pitch, or as you say, it's sort of following what he's warning us about, or what he's promising us. It's actually quite an exciting appointment and quite an exciting period for the club so far. I guess with this game against Fulham, even, we're coming up against a side who are no slouches in the Premier League. I think they're sitting 7th or 8th in the table above teams like Chelsea. So, they're having quite a solid season. And obviously they didn't bring Alexander Mitrovic. There's probably a few other players that stayed out as well. But it was still a strong lineup. You're looking at Harry Wilson and guys like that in that starting 11, Tom Kearney as well, players that we're familiar with, who were part of that title-winning squad last season for them. So to really go toe-to-toe with them for most of the game, when admittedly we were essentially putting out a second-string side as well. So you sort of think our second string against theirs, we actually matched it with them for large portions of the game.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. And I think as I kind of reflect on, the last five years or so and beyond, I think the last time I felt this kind of level of optimism with the manager was probably the Marco Silva reign in the Premier League, because he came in and kind of tried to make a lot of wholesale changes. He brought a lot of staff with him, and he was very big on, the nutrition of the players and how they were going to recover and all those types of things. And I think Rosenior's really has kind of appeared to be a very holistic manager. He wants the team playing a certain way. And he really believes in that philosophy. And I think that because he's like that, it's really nice to know that you don't have this wish-washy, manager that says one thing and then does another. He's kind of outlined his plans and seems very, hell-bent on sticking to it. So I think that's the part that has really impressed me so far.
Yeah, no doubt. A few really big positives out of this game as well, even despite the defeat. It's a 2-0 defeat, but really feels like it's just a 1-0 defeat. Personally, I think, pushing everyone up for trying to push an equaliser and conceding that happens in football. I'm actually a bit surprised that there's people out on Twitter criticising Coyle for that second goal, because, what's he supposed to do in that situation? It's a high ball bouncing over his head, basically, and it's always going to favour the attacker in that sense. Yeah,
exactly right. And that's the thing with a player like Coyle is, that he's not, the qualities that he does have rather. That height's not going to be the thing where you expect him to be that central defender clearing things out of the box with his head. He's more zippy and he'll run all day. And so, yeah, I agree. I didn't have too much concern with the arguable mistake.
Yeah, but yeah, positives out of the game. I thought Xavier Simmons from Chelsea really surprised me. I mean, we saw him for, I actually looked it up. I didn't realize that we'd only seen him for 8 minutes previously this season against Swansea or someone like that. But playing from the start in this one, came to the club with Vale as well, where Vale was probably the more highly rated player, but you wouldn't know it watching these two on the pitch, because I thought Simmons was fantastic. I mean, I think Rosenior sort of singled him out for his pace, which isn't something you would have necessarily associated with him. But going toe-to-toe with Dan James, who's probably one of the fastest players going around, was pretty impressive.
Absolutely. And I guess it's one of those opportunities with a young player like that who, as you said, hasn't had as many minutes as I'm sure he would have hoped coming out on that's the loan spell. To really take the opportunity with both hands and get the praise from Rosenior nonetheless is a very helpful sign, I guess, for his confidence, but also for us to know that there's that level of depth in the ranks.
Yeah, no doubt. And then also really great to see Benjamin Tete back from his long injury layoff. You sort of think we're playing at a certain level before he comes on the pitch, and then he comes on and you just realize the level that he sort of elevates us to, and what we've really missed in that time that he's been missing from the team. You look at sort of Oscar's form, I guess, as one of those examples where he goes on his 7 goals in 7 games run with Tete in the lineup. Tete gets injured. I don't think it's a coincidence that Oscar sort of struggles for form a little bit after that point. But the sort of the space and the movement that he provides and the way that he can sort of bring the forwards into the game was just awesome to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And also for such a long-standing injury as well. I mean, I don't know if this is a fair thing to say, but it's almost like he was a forgotten man because he has been out so long, and similar to Ali. But I think perhaps Ali was the one that we were a lot more aware of the return date. And then, touch wood, now he's obviously been off and got himself injured again. But with that being said, just the fact that, Tete comes back, it's almost has that feeling of a new signing, given the fact that the World Cup's taken place and the manager's changed, and there's so many different aspects about Tete coming back to the squad now at this particular time of the season.
Yeah, no doubt. And I guess the other element then, talking about new signings, we did get to see Aaron Connolly off the bench. Fair enough. It was pretty rusty. He was probably lacking a lot in match fitness. I think he's only played 5 games the first half of the season over in Italy. So Rosenior said it himself that it's going to take him a little while to get up to pace. But I mean, when you sort of compare him to Tete's impact, you can see just how much further along in I guess recovery is probably the right word to use. Tete seems to be, and I think it'll take a little while before we see the best of Connolly.
Oh, absolutely. But I guess the luxury of that is knowing that there is the depth there, that, Connolly does have to kind of, granted he is a name, he does have to prove his worth before he is going to start getting those big minutes. And that's a healthy thing for the squad at this time as well. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess the only other player I sort of wanted to single out, I don't know if there was anyone you wanted to mention, but Sean McLaughlin, I thought at centre back, there was a couple of times he almost seemed to get caught on the ball where you kind of went, oh geez, Fulham are going to be in here, and he just sort of somehow the ball stuck to his feet and managed to get through a couple of players, and his composure on the ball is really great to see. And again, we were calling for it first half of the season when Figueiredo was making a couple of mistakes a week, that we were hoping McLaughlin would get his chance, and he's in the side, and hopefully he's sort of a permanent fixture in it now.
Yeah, absolutely. I was very impressed with McLaughlin. I'm glad that you did bring up his name, because he was definitely the person that I thought was head and shoulders above the rest. And I was really glad to see him playing big minutes and, performing the way he did, because I can remember singing his praises, countless times last season, and to have kind of had him disappear in the way that he has, as you mentioned, with the Figueiredo signing, I'm sure it'll do his confidence the world of good, and really interested to see if he can reach the same heights.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Okay, well, we'll talk a bit of off-field news now, and then we'll go on to that Huddersfield game coming up this weekend. But we do have a few bits of transfer news to discuss. Obviously, the player that we've just mentioned there, Aaron Connolly, signing on loan from Brighton, was confirmed during the week. We sort of touched on it last week in the podcast. The other one being Malcolm Ebioe, I believe. I don't know quite how that's pronounced. Looks like that's over the line. I think Baz Cooper confirming that yesterday, so sounding like it could be confirmed today. Don't know if, I guess that probably means that he can be in the squad on the weekend if needed. Just your thoughts on both those players and what they can bring to the squad?
Look, I don't know if this is necessarily even addressing your question in any way, shape, or form, but I just don't know what world we're living in where you kind of read the media and all of the city papers and the headlines kind of link us to a couple of players and we sign them straight away. Before, like, gone are the days where there was 25 linked players and there was all sorts of really loose rumors going around, and then fake tweets being tweeted that this person's on their way, and then you'd have to go get the Google Translate and find out what the headline actually said. It just almost seems too simple, and it probably speaks volumes as to the new front office that we've got and the way that they go about their dealings. And again, we talk about the early days, and I remember when Tan Kessler said, these are the types of things that they really want to come true on, is the types of people that they attract to the city. And secondly, they want to be as transparent as they can with the fans, with the actual, dealings and signings of the players. So, I mean, that's one thing worth kind of stopping and noting, that it's another great, tick on as far as the management of the club goes, because they're coming true on exactly what they promised the fans they would. So, look, I think two really promising signings. As you mentioned, it's kind of like Connolly's going to take a while to get up to speed as well, and that's kind of a known entity. But coming and getting these Premier League players that probably haven't had the same amount of time, it can go either way. I mean, as you mentioned, when we signed for Fulham, who's scored all the goals,
Wilson.
Harry Wilson.
Yeah.
Harry Wilson. And when we had Harry Wilson on loan, he was somewhat of an unknown entity, and I really believe that his spell at Hull was the thing that kind of springboarded his career. And so I guess that whenever you go and get these players that do have a lot of kind of plaudits and hype around them, but have maybe been out of the team or haven't been given the game time, there's somewhat of a risk. But there's some huge excitement, I guess, from getting that type of player in, and anyone who steps back from the Premier League does have a point to prove. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it certainly seems there's a lot of hype around Ebioe. Had a couple of games for Derby last season. I think he scored a goal as well. So seems to have a little bit of caliber about him. I think the most exciting thing for me, as you sort of said before, is the fact that we've got the business wrapped up so early in the window. And I'll put my hand up as one that was a little bit skeptical that they were over the line. I mean, we had Rosenior and Tan both coming out saying that Ebioe was done. And then after that, we saw a bit of news that QPR were after him, that he hadn't decided yet. And you sort of start to think, have we sort of gone a bit early on kind of calling it a done deal? But as you said, they're men of their word, transparent in the sense that they're sort of saying, look, we're not going to say it's done unless we fully believe that it's done. And it's a matter of getting the business done in the first week or 10 days of the window. It means now that, I mean, potentially we bring somebody else in if we have a couple of players leave, but I'd almost expect that pending any sort of disasters, so to speak, touch wood, that's almost our main business done.
Well, and the case in point, just to build on that as well, Alex, is you think about the signing of Connolly, who is a player that he's going to need some minutes and time to get up to speed. If you don't make that signing till the back end of January, you've kind of missed out on 3 or 4 game opportunities that you can use usefully for him to get up to speed. And I imagine he's going to be a huge part of the run in. So it's just there's worlds apart making a signing early in January and right at the back end of the transfer window.
And the panic that comes with making those transfers right on the deadline day when, there's limited options. And I mean, to an extent, it's what we did with Vale and Simmons in the summer window when we sort of went in for them on the final day, and we haven't really used them as much as we probably envisaged because you just go for what's available sometimes. So getting the business done early, it means that, look, if there is a bargain that comes up on the final day, you're in a position to assess it properly. And I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
And look, I guess also good timing to get a couple of attacking reinforcements in because, as you mentioned earlier, talking about injury news now, we did have it confirmed that Ali will be out for 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, Mike and I sort of joked about it last week in a sort of a dark humour sort of way that Rosenior had said he'd come off as a precautionary substitution, but no doubt we'd find out a bit later on that might have been a bit of spin and he's actually been out for a decent amount of time. And unfortunately, that has come true. It does then raise questions because we then took Tete now back, taking minutes off the bench against Fulham. You don't want to rush him back either because you don't want a similar sort of risk of re-injuring him. Do you sort of see Tete as now needing to be even more carefully eased back in following that issue with Ali?
Look, it's a really interesting one, and I guess that we come at it from a standpoint of so far away and not really knowing the most, like the medical staff of City, obviously having the scans and knowing exactly what the situation is and where they're at in the rehab. It's hard to kind of make a fair assessment from this end. However, given the fact that the last results have been fairly promising, certainly from a league perspective, you kind of wonder if there's a huge urgency. I know that the kind of bottom three safety, it's not a sure thing. And I dare say we are, a couple more results and we can really start to look up the table, given how close the championship is this season. But it doesn't seem at this point in time that there's a huge urgency to make such a swift kind of return for either of those guys. And so I think given the fact that we do have that squad depth, like we saw in the game against Fulham, we're probably not in a position where we need to make such a critical call. So I would prefer that they err on the side of caution, particularly over the next 3 or 4 games before any drastic decisions to race any players back are there when we really know what our outlook's like between now and May.
Yeah, well, no, I 100% agree with you on that one. And then just the final point on off-field discussion, attendances. So we've got the announcement from the owner that there'll be free travel to all away games for the remainder of the season, which I think is just a brilliant gesture. Look, I can't wait for my my plane ticket to come in the mail because no doubt he'll be jetting us over to watch a couple of games. But in all seriousness, I mean, you look at that crowd at Wigan, 2,500 or something like that. It's I think Connolly he called it out in his interview when he joined the club that the away following was just brilliant, and it's something that's starting to draw national attention that we do have a brilliant owner who really does care about the fans.
Oh, without a doubt, and I think that's as we keep saying, we can look at, and we will look at the end of this season when we go back and do our evaluation. And obviously, sitting here in January, there's a lot more football to be played, and I guess the expectations will chop and change, as the run-in kind of takes place. But we've talked about success staying up in the championship and just the revitalised feeling that the club has with the new ownership and what it's meant for the fans and the returning crowds. It's just an incredible thing to see and witness, and to hear players speak into that as well about how good the travelling support is. Players coming to the club and talking about that it's a far cry from what it was when the KCOM or the MKM was honestly like an eighth full.
I was thinking that there was a lot of. I reckon I went to the game with Sheffield United in I think it was Nigel Adkins' second season, where I reckon the crowd would have been less than the 14,000 that we had against Fulham. Where you think Cup crowds tend to be quite small crowds, but we're getting crowds there that we were getting bigger than crowds that we're getting in league games in just a couple of seasons ago. Yeah,
and so the evidence or the proof's in the pudding when you think about that, and that's what I've been really impressed at. So I kind of forgot what the question was. I've gone on a rant just fanboying the new ownership, but as I've lost my train of thought. What we're talking about?
The free away travel.
freeway travel, and that's just another example of it. That's
Yeah.
a huge thing, and it's great to see that for the fans, particularly in the area of Hull. People have done it tough post-COVID and talked about ticket pricing, and so all of those things that were aired by the fans and the supporters group to the club, you can see that the chairman has a very different perspective on what running a football club looks like, and I guess this is just the latest chapter in reasons why people that are City fans are enjoying, the reign under Azure so much.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's do a round of who am I, and then we'll go into that preview of the Huddersfield game. So, are you ready for your question?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so I made 17 appearances on loan at City, scoring 1 goal before joining City permanently and making a further 102 appearances, scoring 3 goals, including a vital goal on the road to the club's promotion.
All right, you have to give me the next clue.
Okay. I reckon you might get it off this one, but we'll see. So I joined City initially on loan in 2008 before signing permanently in 2009 and left City in 2015.
2008, 2009. This can't be Paul McShane.
It is. Well done.
Super Macca.
Super Macca, yeah. I threw in the comment about the promotion goal because I thought that might be a little bit of a hint.
Yeah, that was a huge hint. But I actually forgot about the loan spell initially.
Yeah.
Am I right in saying that he went out on loan as well?
Yeah, he went out a couple of times. I think he went out to I want to say Palace and Barnsley maybe, because there was almost like we got so he joined from Sunderland as a right back as well, which was the other weird element. But then so he joined from Sunderland, and then I'm pretty sure when we got relegated, then the first few seasons under Pearson, I don't think he was really in the team at all. I think he was loaned out because he was just one of those Premier League players with wages and had to go out and then kind of came back in under Bruce. But was with us for quite a while. To only make, when you think about it, to only make 119 appearances all up when he was at the club for 7 or 8 years, just kind of says a lot about, he was very much in and out of the side, but has such a lasting impact with the supporters.
He's a funny one. When I think about Paul McShane, I often think about the resurgence in his career, but also with Alex Bruce as well. They're two players for us that, were largely not kind of recognized beyond, I guess how the esteem that they were held amongst the City faithful, but like players who, as you said, would spend a lot of time out of the squad and would spend a lot of time on the bench. And then, I still firmly believe that one of the main reasons that we didn't win the FA Cup was because Alex Bruce came off. And I do remember we went down the season where we played United on the last day. And I remember we were operating with a back three, and I still remember how good Paul McShane was in that final game. And so certainly, I guess when you think about him, one of the greatest fan favourites and, club icons we'll ever see. I still think that I could probably dig up my Don't Sell McShane shirt at home. It was certainly a fantastic player.
Brilliant. Speaking of Alex Bruce, actually, I don't know if you saw that. I think it was the Wigan game. He and Wayne Rooney were in the crowd, no doubt supporting their mate Liam Rosenior, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I did see that, and it's good to see that the time that Rosenior did at Derby is obviously giving him some pretty impressive links that may end up turning into players and down the track for us.
No doubt. Okay, well, let's talk Huddersfield then. You did sort of allude to it a bit earlier on that whilst we're not necessarily looking at the relegation zone with too much fear, a win against Huddersfield would certainly start to pull us much more into that top half and dare I say top 6 discussion. Huddersfield themselves in a bit of a decent run of form with 2 wins in their last 5. I think it's 3 wins in their last 6 or 7 as well when you look a bit further back. So maybe starting to turn a corner. One of those wins against Rotherham, another against Preston. So a bit of a hard gauge to get, but certainly a game when you look at, in conjunction with the Wigan game and the Birmingham game, it's a really good opportunity to string a 3rd win in a row together in the league and really start to put some good form on the board.
Oh, you'd certainly hope so. Huddersfield are a club that I just hate playing. It feels like we've got an incredibly salty record against them, and
Yeah,
they
lost
always
lost our last 5.
and often when we play them, they are kind of dwindling around the bottom positions, and always seem to manage pulling a result out against us. So it's certainly a fixture that I'm wary of. But as you mentioned, 3 points against them would be a very fascinating win to see what that does to the championship ladder.
Yeah, look, I've sort of described it as a banana skin in the preview of this episode because, as you say there, yeah, 5 losses in a row against them certainly doesn't make for pretty reading. You've got Jordan Rhodes up front for them as well, who's one of those guys who, he's probably coming to the twilight of his career, but on his day, he's still got a bit of form about him. I think he's scored a couple of goals lately for them. I guess probably the biggest question for us, looking back at that last lineup in the league where Rosenia didn't make any changes from the Birmingham win, obviously Ali coming out of that side now with that injury. We talked just before about probably not rushing Tete back into the starting 11, but you're probably then looking at, I want to say, so Longman did start that game. So what dare I say, you'd put maybe, look, it's probably a tough one. Would you put Slater up alongside Longman, and then you put Tufan in a starting role? Like, it's sort of a tricky question. I mean, I guess, or you go Abioe in from the start, if he gets a couple of training sessions in.
Also, I guess that one of the other things that you may want to consider is off the back of the game against Fulham, was there anything that impressed Rosenia there that he may make a wholesale change and bring in one of those players that performed well in the
Simmons
cup game?
maybe.
That's right. And so I did have a go before we went to air at thinking, what's the team sheet going to look like? And I honestly have no idea. I think there's so many different ways that he can go. And I'm really intrigued to see what he runs with.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, look, Tyler Smith's another one, obviously getting the 2 goals against Wigan, may well get a spot, but probably didn't do a whole lot against Fulham. So, yeah, that's another one that could go one of 2 ways. I guess sort of looking at this game then, a bit of form for Huddersfield, good record against us, but, coming off 2 wins ourselves, and I think it's no defeats in 5 or 6 now as well, which is really starting to put together a decent amount of form. What sort of mood or what sort of confidence level are you going into this game with? None?
Look, the duck's got to be broken. And I think that when you've got these teams and there's, such a banana skin, the perennial underachievers when we play Huddersfield, I feel like this is the week where it's we're going to fix it because of the momentum surge that we've got. And I do think that even though, as you said, the result against Fulham wasn't exactly the one that we would have liked, and I think certainly flattered them, I think we've taken a lot of confidence, not just from the league form, but I think that cup ties really, really added to the kind of feeling around the camp, as well as the fact that, there's a couple of new signings on the horizon. And as you mentioned, Tete returning. So I'm optimistic. I think we can snatch this one. I'm going to go 1-0 City.
Yeah, I'll probably back you there. I'll be quite happy with the 1-0 win. Just to get another 3 points on the board. You do start to seriously then look at the fact that we're only 6 points off the top 6. And, yes, there's a lot of teams between us, but start to put a few wins together and anything's possible. We do have Sheffield United looming on the horizon as well, which is a pretty tasty fixture as well.
Oh, absolutely. The form Sheffield United are in, but I'm getting vibes of when we went to Bournemouth last season and took the snatch and grab. And I think that whenever you play a team like Sheffield United and you've got a little bit of momentum behind you, you just, I guess the belief grows that you are a team that's capable of going and snatching those results. When things are going well in football, it's a funny game.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to remember, I think it was the Sheffield United game earlier in the season. I want to say it was at 0-0 when Oscar gets through on goal, 1-1 with the keeper. And suddenly you're talking a very different game if he puts that away.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've got that to look forward to next weekend. But we'll be back to review this Huddersfield result midweek next week and to look ahead to that one. But until then, thanks for joining me, Logan.
My pleasure, Alex. Good to be back.
No worries. And thanks everyone for listening in as well. This has been the Tigers Down Under. And until next time, come on, City.